Won't wait for your friend before we seat your table? Okay, follow me. Hi everyone. This happened yesterday, and it's the first thing that I've experienced that might come close to the other posts here. Here goes. I work for a chain restaurant as a hostess. There's about 150 to 200 locations around the country. It's a southern style restaurant and we line dance. That's just for reference. Considering this is not a small chain, we have corporate policies that all of our locations have to abide by. One of those policies is that we cannot seat an incomplete party. If you put your party in for 4 people, we have to be able to count all members of your party before we take you to your table. This allows for all members to be able to order their food at the same time and have a faster table turnout. This policy has some guests grumbling, but most wait until they have a full party, except this one lady yesterday. She calls in for a party of 6 on our call-ahead wait list. On the phone, we make sure to tell every guest that they need to show up with the entire party. We send her a text to check in when the party is ready, and she does so. We page her to come inside, and lo and behold, there is only 5 members. I tell her we need to see that 6th member before we can seat them. No issue there, she goes back outside. 15 minutes later, she comes back in and says they're all here. I and my other hosts still only count 5 people. She makes a scene saying it's ridiculous, and I direct her to the sign on the host stand that clearly states our policy. She said her 6th guest could be up to an hour late. I tell her, no matter how late someone may be, we have to stick to our policies. I said it more professionally, but you get the gist. She looks to her husband, presumably, and turns back to me and says, "He's not coming anymore. Can we be sat now?" Here's the malicious compliance. Most people know tables come in the ability to seat in even numbers. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. She figured if she was a party of 5 and we sat her at a 6 top, then her other party member would be able to sit. I tell her, okay, no problem. I'll remark you as a party of 5. I sat her at a 4 top with a chair on the end. Boom, 5 top table for a 5-member party. Already limited space and no way another member could sit down. She asks to sit somewhere else, and I tell her that the restaurant is packed, and if she had renamed herself as a party of 5 earlier, I would have been able to put her at a 6 top. 6 guy comes along almost an hour and a half later, tried to pull up a chair, and my manager told them that more than one chair at the end of a 4 top creates a fire hazard. Sorry, corporate policies. Edit/info. She was making a pretty big scene, making other people uncomfortable, freaking out my younger hosts, 15 to 17. Some were just starting to train. She tried to approach one of said younger hosts to get their help, and I stepped back in and told her I was running the host stand and I would be able to help her. That's when I sat her at a 5 top. Not to mention, our call-ahead waitlist doesn't reserve you a table. It just gives you the opportunity to get the table you want first. If you're not there with your full party, your name gets moved down so the next party can be sat until you're ready. I'll tell you right now, I'm not a fan of that policy, but I'm also glad that the lady didn't get to force her way around it. Like, the people enforcing the policy probably hate it too, but nothing you say to them is going to change it, because they're not going to risk their jobs over really nothing. But around here, we have a policy of pressing the like button if you're enjoying the video. That one's not mandatory, but appreciated. Everything is urgent all of the time. You have to prioritize everything. I recently left a job where I had a really toxic relationship with my boss. He was old school and prioritized work over everything else, expecting everyone to do the same. His expectations were so high, it disrupted my work-life balance significantly. I have 2 young kids, and at this point in my life, I'm not doing late-night meetings or weekend reports. The company worked from home 50% of the time, except my boss didn't believe in work from home, so we were 100% in the office even when COVID was at its highest, and the city was flooded and the commute was dangerous. We were the only team of about 50 in the office. I told him I was overwhelmed, that I had too much work to meet all deadlines, and he told me that I have to prioritize everything because everything is urgent. When I asked what is most urgent, what should I do first, he told me everything. You get the idea of his approach. The company worked with flexitime. As long as your hours equaled 37.5 each week, 7.5 hours per day average, it's all good to work anytime between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. I could do a 10-hour workday, then a 5-hour day, as long as it balanced out. My boss, however, demanded that those hours be worked between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And if on any day I was to work 15 minutes over that 7.25 hours, then he wanted to be told what I was using that time for and to have his approval first. I used to start work at 7 a.m., but also hit the gym in the morning around 9:30 a.m. for 45 minutes. When I joined his team, he didn't like this. He set up a meeting with me every morning at 9:30 a.m., which he mostly didn't show up to, but certainly put an end to my morning sessions. I told him I found it detrimental to my mental health. He told me that I needed to find another time. The reason I went in at this time is that I have 2 young kids and my wife works shifts. My boss, meanwhile, has a fantastic work-life balance. He would often start at 9:30 or 10 a.m. and finish early, or randomly decide to work from home. He then asked that I send him multiple emails throughout the day, every day, telling him what I'm working on and seeking his approval for stuff. Stuff that has never required approval previously. I obliged. I sent him 5 emails a day, every day, waffling on about what I was doing. I'd also ask questions in those emails, forcing him to read and respond to them all. After a while, I start to make the questions more subtle, not dot pointing them, but sneaking them into the body of the text. I'd ask the same question multiple times, knowing by this point he's bored of reading my emails. And then, when he didn't give me the answer, I'd let the repercussions happen. The repercussions that didn't exist until he demanded I seek approval. These repercussions were usually raised by my boss's boss. I knew they were happening, but I let it happen. I'd then respond to the group emails, where my boss would blame me, and include the emails I sent him seeking approval as he'd requested. This became a fairly frequent occurrence, since I was sending 25 or more emails a day at this point, which seriously was a huge chore on top of my high pressure, about 200 million of contracts annually, role. I had a really good reputation in the office for my work. Everyone seemed to respect me but him. His manner with people wasn't always appreciated. He would set arbitrary deadlines, and then half them for seemingly no reason. When I refused to enact those, I often had to hand those deadlines on, citing anti-bullying policy. He'd tell me to just get it done. I understand that I wasn't the best, most obedient employee, but he made me this way with his micromanagement. Eventually, I found a new role elsewhere. I demanded an exit interview, where I explained how I don't believe he managed his team in accordance with the company's intentions, how I'd expressed a concern for my mental health and he offered no compromise, how he purposely booked meetings to disrupt my day, and how he demanded I email him over and over and asked approval for 15 minutes of flexibility on start and finish times. The lady from HR had recently encountered my boss, and it wasn't pleasant. He was abusive to her, and she already had his crosshairs on him. I recently met up with a colleague from that team. A week after I left, my now ex-boss was demoted, no longer manages anybody, and has a much stricter schedule himself, now that he reports to someone. My old team is now much happier and much more productive. I'm thinking about applying for the now vacant role as his boss. I've gotta say, getting your boss demoted is amazing revenge. Not fired, but demoted. It's like you treated all these people like crap, and now you have to work with them. At least if you get fired, you could go somewhere where nobody knows you, you know? Why didn't I use Amazon? This is why. Not my story, but my wife's, who doesn't use Reddit. Obligatory background. My wife does procurement for a large US headquartered organization with branches in a lot of other countries. Her branch operates out of the Middle East. As you might imagine, when it comes to working for a large international organization, there are a lot of rules that she's obligated to follow when it comes to sourcing material. And there is a list of preferred sellers that the organization wants her to use, if at all possible. Unsurprisingly, a lot of those sellers are also US based, which is fine most of the time, but can be really inconvenient in a lot of ways given the distances involved with where she's at. So, on occasion, she'll stray from the book and look more locally if she knows it's not going to cause a big issue and everyone will be happy in the end anyway. Usually she gets away with it because the powers that be understand why she does this. Usually. The story. Recently, one newer department manager noticed that an order my wife had made on their behalf didn't come from the preferred seller that they'd been expecting to come through. In this case, Amazon. They chastised my wife for violating policy and insisted that next time she had to use Amazon for orders like this. Okay, fine. Yes, my wife was technically in the wrong, and a reprimand was technically the appropriate response, but my wife had a good reason for doing what she did, which the manager in question found out next year when they put in their next order. You see, because of the distances involved and the large number of departments placing orders, we're talking about multi-ton containers being sent overseas by ship. It can take months for the departments to finally get what they ordered. Also, because of how the shipping and receiving is handled, Amazon is technically out of the loop from the moment the shipment is delivered to the freighter at the port that will be hauling it across the Atlantic. So, from Amazon's perspective, the order is considered delivered for the purposes of their return policy before the ship carrying the order even leaves the dock, and long before it ever arrives in the country my wife is based in. From there, it can take many more weeks for the order to clear customs, be received by her organization, unpacked, sorted, and finally distributed to the various departments who had made the orders. It's fairly typical for this whole process to take about 90 plus days to complete, well past Amazon's 30-day return policy. Now, my wife's job is to just order whatever the various department heads tell her to and trust that they know what it is they're ordering. Of course, sometimes there are mistakes with the order. Either the department wrote down the wrong item or the wrong size/quantity, or Amazon shipped the wrong thing. Mistakes happen. When you're dealing with a dozen departments ordering tens of thousands of pounds of stuff at one go, they're practically inevitable. Usually, something like that is no big deal, until too much time has passed to return it to Amazon for a refund, and your budget is all tapped out for the year, and you really needed that item that you didn't end up getting, which is what happened this year. The department manager in question accidentally ordered the wrong thing, and when they asked about getting it replaced, my wife had to, respectfully, inform the manager that since it was ordered through Amazon and not something more local, hint hint, it couldn't be returned for a refund, and there was no more money in their department's budget for additional orders that year. This story does have a happy ending though, as my wife was able to find another department in their organization who was actually in need of the misordered material, and they performed a lateral budget transfer so that my wife could order what the manager actually needed from a local supplier. I don't really have too much to comment on this one besides good job OP's wife. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that the managers didn't try and blame it on her or something like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's stories and I'll see you next time.